Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm Courtney,
And I'm MK.
and I'm sorry if you heard a lot of commotion. I don't know what you can hear on this mic, but Sadie just lost her mind while I was saying that. So, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
So how are you?
You know, I have a question. And my
Oh, I have
question
answers.
is, have you ever been to a meat raffle?
Absolutely not. You had to explain to me what it was last week.
Okay. So I also didn't really fully know what it was until I went to one. Like I knew vaguely what it was, but basically you have a bunch of people and they buy tables and they come in spending an F ton of money just to be there. And then they bring food and alcohol
Like a
and
gala?
yeah, and then they buy more food and alcohol and then they just sit there and wave singles in your face to buy tickets to get auctioned raw meat.
I would like to be invited as a plus one. I don't
Yeah,
want to
but
be
I mean,
involved in this spending.
mm,
But I would like to go eat and drink whatever they have.
yeah, so I was working it.
Mhm.
But the lovely women of the HSA at my school, to thank the teachers for working it, um, we drank for free while we were working
Love that.
and got free raffle tickets for the basket auction. So I was drinking wine and I won a $50 gift certificate to a brow studio.
Nice. The brows cost that much?
I don't know.
And also, you have nice brows. So what do you do
I
with this? Do you
know.
sell it?
I think I'm gonna take my sister because she's been trying to get her eyebrows done for a while. But also, they don't just do waxing, they also do tinting. And
Okay.
I think I might do that because I have a really beautiful eyebrow shape, but
They're really
um
light.
they're really light, and especially when I'm dyeing my hair. Like Dan asked me the other day, he was like, "I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just really genuinely don't understand because I'm a man." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Why don't you dye your eyebrows when you dye your hair?" And I'm like, "Because my eyebrows are very thin and fine, and if I dyed them, my whole forehead would be orange."
Yeah, fair.
And he was like, "Oh no, that makes sense." I go, "That's why usually when I do a full face of makeup, I color them in." He was like, "Oh, okay. But if I paid for them to be professionally tinted, then I wouldn't have to color them in."
That would be nice.
And I have tinted my eyebrows before, but not as a redhead, only as a blonde.
I've
I don't
never,
know.
but I already have dark eyebrows too because of
Yeah.
hair. So
But so, yeah, I used to tint my eyebrows. Like Crystal would tint my eyebrows for me in Thailand. Um, but yeah, so it was also chaotic. Like
I can only imagine.
for each round, there were like 12 pieces of like raw meat, and you would only sell 240 tickets, and people were just like shoving money in your face. I'm pretty sure my school raised $10,000.
Well, that's great though.
It's fantastic, and I'm super excited about it. But also, like, I have never seen so many people freaking out about like bags of frozen meatballs.
Meatballs is not even like cut
Oh no,
something.
no. Oh no, there was multiple levels of things. Like there were some of the rounds were like frozen things of meatballs and like pizza logs and chicken fingers, and some of them like there was the
Interesting.
the more expensive, and then there were things like entire cuts of ham, like entire hams.
Like spiral ham, like the
Yeah,
good stuff.
like a good spiral ham. There was like bags of hot dogs. There was like full like this long pork loins. There
Yum.
was like there were
Pre-seasoned or
like
do you season them yourself?
I have no idea. I don't know. There
I
were
have a lot of
steaks.
questions about this meat
Yeah.
raffle.
There were steaks, there were ribs, there were pork chops, there were chicken cutlets. Like at one of the rounds, I could not believe because it was 5 pounds of Italian sausage and 5 pounds of frozen chicken fingers. I said, that's 10 fucking pounds of meat.
To be fair, though, Italian sausage sucks. I don't like it. But
Oh,
I
I
love a
do.
chicken tender, and it's not that expensive.
But 10 pounds of meat for $2?
Or for $2?
For $2 for a raffle ticket. And if you won 10 pounds of meat.
Oh, that's a pretty sweet deal. That's a
Right?
pretty sweet deal. Yeah. Ugh, I'm gonna have to order meat when I get off here. I know I just said I was gonna get a salad for dinner, but ugh, I've had no meat. I had no, I did. I had chicken for lunch. I don't know what I'm saying. I had a chicken salad for lunch, but it's fine.
It's
I had
fine.
like a beef, like a hearty meat.
Yeah. So
That's wild.
I
I need to go to
wild.
raffle. That's what it sounds
Right. I had fun working it. I don't necessarily have tons of money to just like
like. Sure.
waste, but like I feel like I have to go to one at some point just to experience the chaos.
Well, I went to the horse races once, and my aunt gave me money to go because she took me with her. And so I'd like
Yeah.
to experience it in that situation where I'm hanging
Right.
with
Like,
the old women who have their own set and they're all wearing those big hats, and then there's me who's not doing any of those things, and they just give me like $3, and I
yeah.
bid on some
Well,
raffle stuff.
well, I was like running around like selling tickets and everything, but like I had a ton of friends there. Like, and so like I was running by and like Rachel and Dan were like handing me cups of whiskey to taste
Oh,
while I was running past them. And
love that. That sounds like a
yeah,
long time,
it was a
but
great
not a bad
time.
time.
No, it was, and it was great, actually.
I love that.
Also, I was sweating,
I don't even want to talk about the weather.
sweating.
I don't even want to talk about it.
But then, of course, the next day it was freezing rain all day. So, like,
Yeah, it's been raining for like 3 days here until
oh
today.
yeah.
Stop today.
Yeah, no, it didn't rain today. It was
No,
windy as shit today, though.
I wasn't outside that much to know.
I opened my windows in my classroom.
But I walked home Friday, or I walked halfway home Friday in the rain, and then it rained all day yesterday, and then it rained all day Saturday. So,
Other than being perpetually rained on, how are you?
well, I don't mind the rain. I love the rain actually. I'd like it to rain every day, always, for the rest of my life. But otherwise, I'm okay. It's been a weird turn of events week. I've been preparing for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Saturday, I don't know if I talked about it last week, we had a buyout for 4 hours from this um college age, I believe, a cappella competition, varsity
Oh
vocal.
yeah, you were telling me about that.
I was incorrect last year. It's not a high school competition. However, still everyone is not of age. So it started at 11 p.m. I went to work at 3 p.m. So there
Absolutely not.
for 12 hours. I made some good connections though. I met this person who is from the UK. They're from London and they do like jazz stuff. So they might do some covers of our stuff for the office. Then
Great.
the woman in charge, I was talking to her because I was helping run a lot of it. And I was talking to
Yeah.
her, and so I made connections with her, and she like knows the like head of Warner. So she's like, just let me email you my information. I was like, yes.
Great.
And then I met this
Please
woman who was from
do.
Dallas and her son's in a music business. And I was like, send me
I
an email
will.
and I might get him an internship. Like,
I love that.
so it was not as bad as it was exactly what I expected, to be fair. And I
Right.
made more money than I expected, but it was like it's one of those nights when you sell at a bar for 200 people where you can't fit more than 150 in there. You can't move around people. And so it's
Yeah,
chaos. Somehow I did not end up with anything spilled on me, which was excellent.
that is excellent.
Yeah, and the people are super nice, but it's just like it doesn't matter how nice you are when I can't walk past you.
Right, for
It's still
sure.
annoying. Um, but on the flip side, I am going to leave the city this weekend, which is exciting.
That
Because
is
I love
exciting.
this city. I never want to leave.
I just gasped like
You didn't
I
know.
didn't know when I for sure knew.
What I've told you like 4 times now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
great.
yeah, so I'm going to Tulsa this weekend. By the time you hear this, I'll be back from Tulsa. But I'm going for work. It's the 10th anniversary of the Woody Guthrie Center. So Friday, it's just me and Nora going. And we're going to the Drillers game on Friday because Anna, Woody Guthrie's granddaughter, is throwing the first pitch of the game. And then all day Saturday, there's like performances and different stuff happening at the center. And then Sunday, we're going to go see the Bob Dylan Center and all that stuff. And there's this really great park Anna told us about that we're going to go see. And hopefully it's sold out, but I'm hoping we can still get into the Rambling Jack Elliott show Sunday night,
Nice.
which will
Yeah.
be super fun. And then I'll be flying back on Monday. So it's a quick turnaround. And it's over the weekend, but it'll be nice to like slow down for a bit just because
Yeah.
everything's been so chaotic here. Yeah, so I'm really excited about that, and we're staying at like a super fun looking hotel
I
downtown
love
Tulsa.
that.
So yeah, that's me. That's how I am. I'm thriving,
I love
but
it.
also chaotically thriving, I guess.
I mean, when are we ever doing anything but chaotically thriving?
Never. Absolutely never. But you know what helps us in these times, these trying times of chaos?
Would that be spiritualization?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a bit of spirituality to top us off.
Um, you know, we've been talking a lot about eating better and being healthy, and so I went in that direction with my quote, and my quote for the day is very simple.
Hmm.
If you're happy and if you're feeling good, then nothing else matters.
Oh, so true. So
Yeah.
true. Story.
Robin Wright said that.
Oh,
Love
I love
her.
Robin Wright.
Yeah.
Good old Jenny. Good for
Right.
her. She's done so many other things, and she's like an activist. Like she's a really incredible
Right.
person.
She's
But
not just Jenny, but like it's
like,
fine.
yeah, no, she's great outside of Forrest Gump also. But
I mean, The Princess Bride,
true. And I mean, she's done what's the
House
one
of
with
Cards,
Kevin Spacey, House of
House of
Cards,
Cards. Yeah.
and like yeah, she's like very much an activist. Like she does a lot of good things for the
Yeah.
world, and she's an incredible actor. So
Yeah.
kudos, kudos to Robin Wright.
Yeah.
And yes, just be happy. And you know what makes me happy, regardless of what's happening in the world?
Would that be American Horror
Sorry,
Story?
sorry. Absolutely. 100%. No question. Every day. I finally watched the season finale of the most recent season NYC like last week after we got done recording. So I was like, I gotta watch this episode finally.
Yeah, maybe.
I had watched the entire season as it came out, and then I got really busy for the finale, so I didn't watch it.
Right.
But
That makes sense.
I finished it now.
Good.
It was fine. Um,
It was
it was fine.
whatever.
The post season 5 is all kind of a hit or miss.
Got it.
So some episodes are really great, some seasons are really great, but otherwise it's just kind of like toss up.
Yeah.
But Murder House will always be tops in my heart. Top-ish. This is the top 3 for sure. For sure, top 3.
Okay.
But I love it forever. And today we're talking about American Horror Story season 1, Murder House, episode 4, called Halloween, part 1. Which
Yeah.
means we're gonna have a part 2 next week.
Woo.
And this is the middle of the season. Like that'll be the mid-season finale. It's a whole thing. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Love it. And as I proposed, it aired October 26th of 2011.
Ew.
I
Sorry,
had a
no,
bad time for you.
yeah, October 26th is Brent's birthday, and October 26th, 2011 was the first year that we were dating on his birthday.
See, my mom's birthday is the 24th, and I was just starting my freshman year of college as a music major, so I was doing okay. I was doing okay.
Yeah. No, I was not. I mean, no, to be fair, I was doing great, but
You
like
thought
in
you were doing well,
retrospect,
but
I thought
like,
I was doing great.
right.
That I went to New York City for his birthday that weekend, and we went to see How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying with Danny Radcliffe on Broadway. So like I was doing great because I saw Danny Radcliffe on Broadway from
Right.
the third row.
He's coming to Merrily We Roll Along. And not to blast anyone, but I think I'm in well enough with the Hudson people that they're gonna get me into any show I want that comes to the Hudson, which includes Merrily We Roll Along. So I'm just saying I've officially made it in New York City. Um, but yeah, so I was in college. You were dating Brent. It was a time for
I mean, to
everyone.
be fair, I was also in college.
You were also in college, but um, you were a sophomore by then. You were like, and you were done. You were like in college already. It wasn't
Yeah.
like fresh and new for you.
Yeah, no, no, no. I,
Um,
I was already like stage managing shows.
yeah, I was getting ready for my first round of finals, which were like 2 weeks from now. So I was panicking, I'm sure. Um, but this episode was rated 8.1 out of 10, which is
Okay.
fair.
Yeah.
Um, I'll be shocked if part two isn't rated higher, but this is fair for part one. The number one song I think is still the same. It's Someone Like You by Adele.
Yes, that's the same. Yeah.
The number one movie, which I there has to have been another one that came out recently because I swear I heard about this more recent than 2011, was Puss in Boots. There was like a second one that came out recently or something, right? Like
Well, there was definitely a Puss in Boots thing on Netflix that came out much more recently.
maybe that's
But
what
I
I was
don't.
thinking of.
Oh. Apparently, it's a film series. Wow, that's
Right.
so interesting. 2011, 2012, and then 2022.
That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of was 2022.
Yeah, but no, the first one was 2011. That is
Gosh, I haven't seen any of them. Not a one of them.
no me either. Not even a scene from one of
No,
them.
absolutely not.
I do remember the commercials from the 2011 Puss in Boots movie, like the TV commercials, like trying to get it where it was like Puss in Boots, like in a bunch of other fairy tales, like getting all confused and
Oh,
messing things
right.
up. I
Because it
remember
was
those
coming out of Shrek.
yeah, because this
Yeah,
was the first solo movie. I remember those commercials. I did not ever then watch the movie.
me either. I'm sure it was lovely. I'm sure it's thriving. Um,
Well, clearly they made a third movie 11 years later.
that doesn't always mean anything. I've seen third movies that should not have ever existed. Um, the number one book, which I own but haven't read, and I've owned for quite a while. The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks.
Oh, I have read that.
Did you like it?
I did.
I heard good things. My mom read it and she liked it. And I
To
have it.
be to be honest, I haven't read a Nicholas Sparks book that I didn't like.
Me either. I saw him speak when I was in college because I had a ULM as our Monroe school and I went to tech. But when I was
Yeah.
in high school, I took classes through ULM for dual enrollment or whatever. So I
Yeah.
used my ULM ID so I could get into both things. And so ULM hosted Nicholas Sparks at like the Civic Center or something one year. And so I got to go for free to listen to him talk, and it was awesome.
My favorite one, there was one that I really, really liked for a while before it became a movie, and then it became really popular when the movie came out, and I was like, shut up, you guys are fake fans.
I
Um,
haven't read as much of his stuff as I'd like. I mean, I've read like five or six books at least. Like, I read
yeah.
the classics, Dear John. I read,
Hmm.
there were like three others that haven't come out as movies that I've also read the other ones that have come out as movies. Uh,
Yeah. Um,
Last song, that was Nicholas Sparks, wasn't it?
yes. The one that I really, really liked, Safe Haven. I read Safe Haven. I read Safe Haven way before it came out as a movie, and I
I never saw the
loved.
movie. I only read the book.
Yeah. And then the one that is my favorite Nicholas
Mhm.
Sparks book that is it's an underrated one, and I don't think it has ever become a movie yet, is A Bend in the Road.
I think my mom read it, but I don't think I've read it.
Oh, so good.
I read his books strangely though. Like I never read The Notebook because I saw it as a movie and I was like, this is the best movie ever. I don't want to ruin it. And so I read it.
I read it way after, but I would, as someone who read the movie and like watched the movie and read the book and was really afraid that the movie wouldn't be perfect to me anymore, read the book for
Great.
sure.
Excellent. That's excellent to hear. Because that's also what's the one that Mandy Moore was in?
A Walk to Remember.
I haven't read that one either yet. I've only because I know the book is better,
Yes.
but that movie rocks my
Is the
sock.
best movie of ever of anything ever.
Right. So I haven't read that one either.
Little 11-year-old me wanted to get a butterfly tattoo on a state line, and like
I still need to go stand at the crossroads, like at the four states. Yeah. I will never not need that.
be in two places at once.
Yeah.
Um, the song that she sings in the play
No.
in that movie, Only Hope, it's actually a Christian song, and I have performed it at my church for like every Christmas concert ever. Like,
I've performed it in my shower in all of the homes I've lived in.
yeah, no,
That has just come out.
I publicly performed that
It's
song
so
so many times.
well, I don't publicly perform songs very often. I've only done a couple. So,
Oh,
but it's so beautiful.
yeah.
All right. Another thing I could talk about for years, Nicholas Sparks, but we don't have time for that.
No.
So on this day, this October 26th, 2011, was the release of Raw 1, which was the most expensive, still is, Bollywood film that has ever been made, and it's a superhero movie.
Fantastic. Love it.
It's also the day that Amy Winehouse's death was ruled an accidental. They had the final ruling on it, which was very sad.
Yeah.
And then some famous birthdays, not day of, but they had a birthday this day. Hillary Clinton, Keith Urban, and Seth MacFarlane.
That's so sad that Keith Urban shares a birthday with my ex.
I know. And Seth MacFarlane, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well,
His,
just think that every time Keith Urban sings Stupid Boy, he's singing to your ex.
oh, that's fair. Fair enough.
Yeah. I love that song. The director, again, has changed. It's David, I meant to look this up, Semel or Simmel. It's Semel.
I think it's Semmel, David Semmel. I've
Simmel?
heard that name before.
Okay. David Simmel, he's known for a lot, so probably. He's known for Heroes, which a lot of
Yeah.
people are involved in from this show, and I need to apparently watch.
Yeah. Wait, have you never seen Heroes?
I've never seen Heroes.
Well, then one of the comments that I have in my notes doesn't make any sense to me.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I'll add it to my list. I'll watch it after I finish Supernatural in 10 years.
Oh,
Um,
it's so good.
Apparently everyone that I've ever loved is in it. So,
Yeah,
he's also known for My Own Worst Enemy, House, and American Horror Story. Obviously, American Horror Story.
obviously, yeah.
The writers, the creators are Ryan Murphy and Brad Falchuk, and the writer for this episode is James Wong, who is known for X-Files. He was one of the main writers on X-Files, which like is amazing.
Yeah.
A show called The One, which I don't know, Space, Above and Beyond, and American Horror Story. Those are the things he's known for. Some fun facts about him. He uses Jack Colquitt and Bloodworth over and over in scripts he writes. Like he uses those names a lot. He has twins, and he's BFFs with Glenn Morgan, who is one of the co-writers on X-Files. And then they were the two that wrote Millennium, and they
Okay.
got to big beef with Chris Carter, the creator of X-Files, during the Millennium years. But they've come back together since, and they had like a come back to Jesus meeting, whatever they wrote for later episodes of X-Files.
Fantastic.
So now I'm going to talk about a couple people that are stars in not only the show, but in the world and the universe. I'm going to start with Zachary Quinto.
Zachary Quinto.
Shad Warwick. He's known for Star Trek.
Heroes. The boys
Margin
from the
Call,
band.
Star Trek Beyond, and Star Trek Into the Darkness. Those were his top 4 credits.
Okay, but
Okay,
Heroes,
back out.
he is absolutely known for Heroes. I don't know why that's not on there.
And yeah, no, he's absolutely known for Heroes. That's a lot of his trivia, and he's definitely known for Boys in the Band. So I don't know, like, again, why those are not tops.
Right.
I have a couple of fun facts for you because of Heroes. He's BFFs with Milo Ventimiglia and Kristen Bell.
Mm-hmm.
He graduated from Carnegie Mellon in 1999.
Yes.
And my favorite fun fact, he directed one episode of Lizzie McGuire.
I love that so much.
Not a thing I ever would have guessed.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I was like, so far you have said nothing about him that I don't already know because I know everything about him.
Right.
And you said that, and I go, I don't know everything about him.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I didn't know about him, like, either. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I did not talk about Frances Conroy last week, did I?
No, I don't believe so.
I talk about her quite a bit, so I had to make sure it wasn't on the podcast. I was talking about her. She plays Moira O'Hara, and she's known
you did not talk about her yet.
Great. She's known for 6 Feet Under, which is another show I need to watch. The Joker, The Aviator, and Six Souls. I do not know what Six Souls is, but also about 1,000 other things. I could talk about her until next week and still not have enough things to say about her. She is well documented in the world.
Yeah.
Some fun facts about her. She was on Broadway in a show called A Bright Room Called Day, which I've never heard of. Do
I
you know that?
have. I don't know it well, but I have heard of it.
Okay. I had not. Her eye is actually the way it's portrayed in the show. And what's his face? Ryan. Oh my God.
Ryan
Murphy.
Murphy.
Thank you. Ryan Murphy told her that he didn't want her to cover it up with makeup or anything like she has in the past because it added to her backstory as Moira. But it was caused by a really bad car crash she was in.
Oof, poor thing.
She was nominated for a Tony for her role in Arthur Miller's The Ride Down Mount Morgan, which is another thing I've never heard of.
I haven't. I don't. I know a
Right.
lot of Arthur Miller, and I've never heard that.
Right. I was like, I know Arthur Miller, and I also didn't know this one. She was good friends with Arthur Miller
Love it.
also.
That
And
that that
she's
feels correct.
doesn't it? It does. And she was in three films that were nominated for Oscars: Scent of a Woman, Joker,
Yes.
and The Aviator,
Fantastic.
which tracks. They were nominated for Best Picture in the Oscars. And so now, as we do with every episode, we start with a flashback. We are carving pumpkins on Halloween, and it is Zachary Quinto and his partner.
I wrote, right, I knew he was in the show.
Yes.
Because
And
weirdly, remember we were talking about I have no knowledge of the show at all. Things that I know, like my very limited knowledge. I remember when Asylum came out and they were talking about people that were
Adam Levine.
no, no, that I don't know anything about that. We're talking when Asylum came out and they were talking about people who were major roles in the first one that were still major roles in the second one, and he was on that list. So I knew he was in it, but then I got so involved in the insanity of the story that I forgot he was in it. And then I go, oh, he's part of the gay couple that killed him, like from the murder suicide. That absolutely checks out.
He's quite prolific in this whole series.
Yeah.
He's in most of the seasons. I don't know. I don't think anyone is in all of them except maybe Frances Conroy.
Okay.
She might, or Dennis O'Hare. Dennis O'Hare is in a lot too. They're probably the two that are in
The
more seasons
most.
than anyone else. Yeah.
Okay.
I actually don't know if Frances Conroy was in this last season. Regardless, we'll get there in 10 years.
Yeah.
We'll get there. So they're talking and chatting about getting the house up, and Chad, played by Zachary Quinto, is clearly like being very petty, and he's very frustrated with his partner, Patrick. And he tells him, he's like, I'm going to the gym, and he's like, great, don't forget to wear a condom. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm going to the gym. Turns out he's been sleeping around, but then like 5 seconds later, we found out that it's like basically an open relationship. He's like, remember, you don't ask, you don't talk about it. We do what we do, and then we come back. And
Yeah, except for that it's also clearly definitely not.
right, like
Like,
it's technically open, but like no one's happy
no,
with that.
no.
And
There's
so, like, even Patrick, who's the one like sleeping around, he's not happy about it.
right.
And we also learned that at this point they're trying to sell the house. They're gonna decorate it, they're gonna make it look super fun, and that way they can sell it and get out of not only the house but their relationship, which is like pretty sad. And then Patrick drops the revelation that he's like, I don't know how we got here. We were going to have a baby, and I was like, oh, that's so sad.
That is really sad.
Yeah, and so then he like goes to the gym as he said he would, and Chad is hanging about, and he's like getting ready with the apples, et cetera, et cetera.
Also,
And
his feelings about colors of apples are the most toxic thing I've ever heard in my life.
also his feelings about apples, he made an error in the statement, no one caught it. Because if you remember the end of the episode, he talks about gala apples,
Yeah.
and he says instead of Granny Smith, but when he calls them gala apples in this episode, in this um time, he
Yeah.
says Granny Smith instead.
No, no,
And
no. No,
or
no,
maybe he
no.
He says
No,
Galaxy's holding a Granny Smith is what it is.
no, yes, but that
Yeah.
wasn't actually, no, that wasn't a mistake. No, no, no. What happened was he had Granny Smith's apples and
Mm,
he said to Patrick that he needed to go get Gala apples because
yes.
the Granny Smith wasn't working. And then he put the red ones in the bucket and then he was like, ugh, I don't know why they were red. I wanted, like, the red doesn't look as good. It has to be the green, blah, blah, blah. And he's just having a fucking
Yeah.
breakdown. Then later, when he in the episode, the problem is that they are Gala and not Granny Smith, and Gala was what was in the bucket
Yeah.
when he died. So it's not actually a mistake. It's just you have to follow his train of thought,
Right.
and it's not quite there.
IMDb fails me again.
Yeah,
Shocking. But
shocking.
while he's going through all of this, I didn't even put that down as I wasn't even going to mention that. And then I was like, I'll mention it. Shouldn't have. Should have just followed my instinct. Um, he hears Patrick come in and he's like, "Did you get the apples? How'd everything go?" Blah blah blah. But instead, it is not Patrick. It is Patrick. Oh my gosh, I can't even use my words. It is indeed the Rubber Man, and he.
Now, here's my problem. This is now twice that someone has not recognized that it's not even the same shaped body as their partner.
Well, to be fair, he didn't like look at him until he like did, and maybe that's what he looks like in a rubber suit. We haven't seen him in a rubber suit.
I
It
just feel
sucks you
like
up, probably.
there's a lot of stupid people in this show.
No, that's not incorrect. But like, we just don't know what he looks like in a rubber suit, you know?
Yeah,
And
I guess.
yeah. So he goes to dry the apples and breaks his neck. So that's Chad. Now he and
This is where the quote that I was going to say doesn't make any sense to you, but it might to some of our listeners. Because, like I said, on Sunday's episode, this is the first time my dad watched an episode of the show with me.
oh right.
My dad goes, "What? Siler can't die. He has superpowers."
I did know that. I do know that they call themselves Silers something. The fans.
Oh yeah,
Siler's
but
Army or something.
yeah, stop.
Okay, well, he can and he did. So here we
Right.
are.
And then he goes, "Wait, but I thought you just said he was on the show for a while." I go, "Dad, everyone on the show's dead." And he was like, "What?" So then, as we were going through the show, I kept being like, "No, no, no, that one not alive either. That one
No.
definitely also dead."
You got to keep like a tally going. Like, here's
Yeah.
the live people, here's
This
the
one.
dead.
And he goes, "Is that one alive?" I go, "Yeah, no, that one." I go, "That one's fine." He goes, "What about that one?" I go, "To be honest, that one, not 100% sure what their story is." We'll get there.
Don't worry, you'll find out all of their stories by the end. Um, yeah, and then Patrick shows up and sees it all happening, and naturally, very quickly, well, we don't see it, but presumably he dies, because then we hit the credits, which is a change of pace. We hit the credits before we jump to present day,
Yeah, that was weird.
but it also felt right. So like,
Yeah.
made sense.
Well,
But
but
now,
also because it wasn't really not present day. It was only a year before.
right. Yeah. I was like, was it a year or was it 6 months? I couldn't remember for a reason, but I think you're right. I think it was a year.
No, it was a year because it was Halloween again.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right. Um, so then we got jumped to like present day, and we're having a conversation with the realtor. We've learned that only one person has come to visit the house. They disappeared, who I assume was Nora.
Correct. Correct.
Even though they don't say. Um, and then her name's Marcy, the realtor, and she's like, you know what you got to do? You got to get some fluffers. And here's the thing. That's not a typical word used in real estate.
No.
It's used in a very different industry.
Um, it isn't it people who remove spirits from houses?
No. No, it's not. It's used in the porn industry. I've heard entirely too many different true crime
Mm,
porn stories. This is the only reason.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but that is the only way I've heard it referenced. Unless you're talking about a fluffernutter sandwich, which is marshmallow fluff and peanut butter, which is delicious. Um, and the fact that it's a gay couple leads into the fact that that's what they're alluding to. Um, and so it's just just an interesting conversation to have. And then we learned that the twins have egged the house, and Ben sees them for the first time. So
Yeah.
we obviously know they're there, but no one else does. And then so then we go back to after they've told Marcy about that, and she's like, well, this didn't bode well. And
Right.
he's like, why did you even tell her? And Vivian's like, look, I agree with her on this one point that I've ever agreed with her on. This is the only one. Uh, and he's like, okay. And so they're talking about it, and she's like, I have like this woman who's like really refined, but she's more expensive. She's like, or we have this young gay fellow. And everybody's like, the young gay fellow, 100%, no questions. And
Yeah.
I was like, to be fair, a young gay fellow is definitely a better sell point for a house than like an older refined woman.
Correct.
Just what it is. They're hipper,
Especially in Hollywood.
especially in Hollywood, like way more popular.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the Langford house, and Addie is chatting it up with Constance's boy toy, and he's telling her a story of people coming back from the dead, and how this is
An actual myth.
an actual myth. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That on Halloween, All Hallows Eve, etc., people can cross the barriers from dead to living. And so anyone
Yeah.
dead can come in and be more corporeal and can leave wherever their spirit is haunting.
Right.
And so he's telling her this, and she's like, wow, that's really sad. She's like, I'd never want to be a ghost. It's so sad. And I was like, well, that's heartbreaking. And
Yeah, but
then,
it's also like she just says it in a way where she like it's like it's a weird level of energy because you like know that she's not saying it from a like being afraid of ghosts kind of thing. It's like a
right,
I my friends
all my friends
suffer.
are ghosts. Yeah. And so she's like, it's really hard. It's not something I want to do.
Right.
Um, then, so the boy toy goes to like get groceries or whatever.
He
And
goes, what is oh, chocolate chips and Pall Malls.
yeah, yeah. And then he's like, can I use the change to fill up my bike? And I was like, okay, you are way too young for anyone. You're way too young for me, I feel like. And I'm
Correct. No,
not
for sure.
confident.
Even I couldn't date you.
Like, we are not compatible. And I am at least 30 years younger than Constance. Um, but then she goes on this whole kick. She's so hit or miss with Addie. And it's like you never know how to feel about her because sometimes it's
Right.
like, I'm taking care of you, you're my child, I love you more than anything. And then she just defends her for 20 minutes. She's like, because she's telling Addie, she's like, you can't hit on my boyfriend. He's not like the other ones. Like, you can't like do this, or whatever. She's like, it's not like that. And she's like, I know how this always turns out. It's always the same. And then Addie's like, but he does smell better. It's like, okay, Addie, you
Okay.
do have a crush on him. It's very clear, but we also know that, you're not gonna try anything.
Yeah, but then she's also just like, I just want to be a pretty girl. And
Yeah.
she's like, you can't, you'll be Snoopy.
I know. And she's like, you're not a pretty girl. And I was like, this is so mean. Like, she could be a pretty girl. She is a pretty girl. Like, it was so sad. Um, but then she's like, yeah, she's like, you're gonna be Snoopy again. And then we go back to the house, and Larry's banging on the door again. And he says, Ben comes to the door, and he's like, I'm trick or treating. Please put my $1,000 in this bucket here. And I was like, okay, look, if we're trick or treating for thousands of dollars, I'm in. I don't care how old I am. You're older than me. I
Mm.
can go trick or treat for thousands of
Yeah,
dollars.
for sure.
Ben is not about it though. He's like, we're not doing this. And he's like, well, I know all your secrets. I'll tell everyone. And Ben's like, yeah, but you're the one who killed everyone. And he's like, I don't care.
He's
Like, I
like,
have a brain tumor.
he's
What do I have
like,
to live for?
and he's like, you're right, I did kill them. But you built a gazebo over the dead body.
And his
Also,
baby.
also if they dig up the dead body, pregnant.
Right. So you were definitely more involved than I was, even though I technically am the one who killed her.
Because
And I pop back over, and Ben is meeting with Tate again. And he's already said he wouldn't talk to him, but Tate has gotten more somber and more together than he was the last time we saw him, which is a
yeah.
change. And he starts asking him, he's like, okay, he's like, I've told you to go to this other therapist. You didn't go. He's like, I don't know what to do with you. And he's like, you're the only one that can help me. I can't go see anyone else but you. And he's like, well, he's like, I can understand that. He's like, but we need to talk about it. You have to tell me how you got inside. And Tate has this elaborate plan of how he got inside that like makes so much sense. It's so easy to understand. And I'm like, why didn't we? First of all, if you were going to lie about it, why didn't you lie earlier? Because this is a great explanation.
Correct.
I mean, it's still like kind of creepy that you're just like sneaking around the house, but he even was like, I tried to like throw rocks at her window and she was ignoring me. Like she was being the good girl, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And
it's like a very impressive cover story there.
it's very manipulative to get Ben back on his side.
Oh yeah.
He's like, this is what I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know. And he begs Ben to help him. And finally Ben's like, fine, I'll help you, but it can't be in this house. And Tate's like, great, no problem.
Which
So go
is
back
clearly actually a problem.
yeah, which is
That's
definitely
fine.
a problem, but not like tomorrow. It's a problem for future date.
Yeah.
Um, so go back to Vivian and the police who is Amandil from Lucifer.
Yeah.
This had to be one of his like earlier roles because I don't think I've seen him in a lot before this. And he's telling her about all the alarms and he's like, we're setting you up. It's gonna be like, call me if anything happens. If everything goes
He's
well,
also
call
like
me.
for sure flirting with her.
For sure flirting with her, but also he's like pretty attractive and she's just like, it's not like she's not into it.
Right.
Yeah. So they're going through this whole new elaborate alarm system to make sure the house is safe. And Moira brings in carved pumpkins and Vivian's like, "Oh my gosh, is that what the boys brought in?" And she's like, yeah, sure." Like it's so clear that she didn't get these from whatever young gay fella is supposed to be coming in.
Right.
And she's like, "Yeah, I love this time of year and I love carving pumpkins and whatnot." I was like, "Moira, you're so many layers. You have so many layers." Um,
She loves Halloween because she can leave.
I know. And then she asks if she can have the day off to go see her mother. And I was like, that is depressing, but also
Yeah.
lovely. Um,
Right.
and then Vivian walks outside to put the pumpkins out, and there's this gay couple standing by the fence, just admiring everything in the world. And she starts talking to them. They introduce themselves as the Warwicks. Well, Chad says, I'm Chad Warwick, and this is my ball and chain. And
Yes.
but they are the Warwicks, and they're pretending to visit the house. And Vivian's like, "Oh my God, you're gay. You must be the young gay man that's coming in." And they're like, "Sure, whatever,
Yeah, that's the thing that I do.
absolutely, no problem." And so they come in, and they're immediately just like, "Welcome in," and they start crafting and doing all this stuff. And Chad just like goes off, and he's like, "Great, I'm here to help you decorate. This is my forte." And Vivian, thinking he's the young gay fellow who's supposed to help sell the house, she's just like, "Sure,
Correct.
do whatever you want." And
Do what you want to do.
yeah, so he's talking about what they need to do, and she's like, well, aside from these Halloween decorations, I do not know why I can't talk today.
I don't
Aside from these
know.
Halloween decorations, what else should we do to the house to make it more sellable? And he's immediately like, get rid of the gazebo. And Ben's face
That
goes
was
like,
so uncomfy.
I
I
know. He's like,
hated everything about that.
and she goes, oh, well, we just put it up. He's like, great. We'll leave it up for tonight and take it down tomorrow. Like,
He's like the lattice work is all wrong. It's the wrong style. You need a garden. Like he's just going
yeah,
off.
he has got plans. And then Ben, being in shock, cuts himself. And we learned Patrick was an EMT. And he's like, just let Patrick fix you up. And he's like, oh my gosh, I thought you were a fluffer. And he's like, but he's also an EMT. It's fine.
Yeah.
And so they go up to the bathroom to be fixed up. And Patrick immediately tries to hit on Ben. Like, no question.
No.
And Ben's like, I'm absolutely not gay. And he's like, yeah, I wasn't either. And it's like,
Oh my God.
no.
No. Not only did he say I wasn't, he said I wasn't he said I wasn't gay until I had another guy suck my cock.
Right.
My dad goes, "What channel was this show on?" I said FX. He goes, "Oh, okay." Because it was for sure not networked.
No, it was absolutely not network TV. No.
No, no,
Too much
no.
going on here. Um, And then Ben rebukes him still, and he's like, "Well, just don't tell Chad." He's like, "We're going through some difficult stuff." Yeah, you're dead together and stuck in a house now.
Yeah.
Um, so then Chad's talking to Vivian again, and he's telling her about all the like issues he's had with like Patrick, like cheating and whatnot. And she's like, "Oh my God, how did you find all this out?" He's like, "You literally just checked the cell phone bill." He's like, "They can delete anything off the phone, but you can't
You
delete what the
can't
bill
delete a phone
says."
record.
Right. And I was like, "Oh no."
I was like, no, you're giving her ideas.
Hmm.
I was not thrilled about that.
No. So then we go to Addie and Vi, and Violet walks into her room, and Addie just like pops out from under the bed. Bless her heart, she is such a mess, and kind of a creep, but it's
Yeah, it's
and
great.
so Violet's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And Addie's like, "I just want to be a pretty girl like you. Can you help me?" And Vi's immediately like, "Absolutely, I'm in,
Yes.
sold."
Yeah, 100%.
And so she's doing her makeup and everything, and then Addie starts asking her about Tate, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you know Tate?" And she's like, "Yeah, we talk when he comes for his sessions." It's like, "Okay, Addie, sure." Um, and then she talks
Well,
about,
no, so Addie's the one who my dad was like, what about that one? And I go, honestly, I don't know. I don't know anything about this one. I got nothing.
yeah, well, no, you have more answers. But she starts talking about it, and she's like, "Yeah, he really likes you." And then Violet's like, "Okay, Addie, but like for realsies, you have to stop breaking into the house." And she's like, "But I like it here. My friends are here." And Violet's just like, "What?" And then Addie just like goes off on something else. She's like completely avoids that she just said that she has friends in this house.
Yeah. But I was like, oh, Addie has a real friend now.
She does. I know, a real live one. Um, that breathes in everything. So she goes home, and Constance is just like chasing her around because she's got all this makeup on her face. And
Yeah.
she keeps saying she wants to be a pretty girl. And Constance gets very mean. And she's like, "You're
Yeah.
not a pretty girl." She's like, "This is how people see us on the street. People think I'm a hero because I take care of you." She's like, "I should have gotten rid of you." All this stuff. I was like, Jesus Christ, Constance.
Yeah, it
Somehow
was
dial it back a bit.
so, so sad.
So mean. And she's just like such a conundrum.
Yeah.
But then we go to Violet, who's in the basement. Turns out she's meant to meet Tate. And instead of just like being normal, Tate shows up in the rubber man suit.
Now, I was like, oh my God, is Tate the real rubber man? And I was like, "Ugh, I feel like that's ick. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I don't care who you put in the rubber man suit. It is ick, to
Yeah,
be
but
fair.
like it's extra ick if like anything that Tate feels for Vi is real.
Right. Right. That's fair.
I don't like it.
So he's in this suit and he takes off the hat and he's like, "Oh my God, I scared you." And she's like, "I'm never scared." She's like, "I'm not scared of anything." It's like, okay. You people are very dramatic and very like
Right.
one end or the other. Like you're all over the top.
Correct.
Like there's no gray line for any of you,
Mm-hmm.
especially with all these people who are in their gray line of between life and death. But that's fine.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah, there's a lot of black and white for all the gray happening here.
right, exactly. And so they're like, "Well, let's sit down." And he's like, "I'm going to tell you a story about the guy who lived here before." So Tate tells her the story of Dr. Charles, which we heard on the murder tour, but he goes into a bit more detail. He kind of
He
pulls
he gave
her
he
through it.
basically like picks up where the murder house
And
tour left, where Stan left off.
yeah. And so we learned that like one of the boyfriends of one of the women who had an abortion finds out. And they're not supposed to tell anyone, but of course, I mean they're teenagers, of course they did.
Yeah.
And he calls the house, well, someone calls the house and starts saying all these really creepy things. They're like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And they're not saying anything else, and Nora's just like, whatever, this is so creepy. And then it
Yeah.
clicks and she's like, "Oh
I
my
would
God."
say she figured that out way faster than I would have.
Oh, 100%.
I
100%. But
mean,
like she's probably
I don't like murder babies. I mean,
I was
and
gonna say she's probably like on edge waiting for something to happen.
right, and not necessarily to say opinions on life or death, and I don't want to get into the politics of it, but like she also, it's clear that she feels that that's what she's doing. Like
Yeah, you can see it on her
when
face.
when she's giving the drugging the girls and like doing it, she doesn't feel good about it. She feels uncomfortable with it. So that her mind immediately went there because of her own guilt.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she goes, and of course her baby is gone. So she's like yelling at Charles, and she's telling him, she's like, our baby's gone, what are we gonna do? And they're waiting. We find out they're waiting around for a ransom note. They're like, we'll pay whatever, even though they have no money. They're like, we'll pay whatever, we'll do whatever. But instead of getting a ransom note, they get body parts in jars.
Yeah, it took me a second to figure out what was happening with that and like why they did that. That
So
is
ties it into what we have in the basement now.
disgusting, like horrible.
Yeah. It's really bad. There's a much easier way you could go about that. Um, aside from being that gruesome, but
But
whatever. This
also
guy
like
apparently,
that is like a level of psychopathic that like I cannot begin to understand. Like I
yeah,
understand
that's like a level
grief.
of evil.
Right, like I understand grief, I understand anger, I understand revenge in the sense that like you took something from me, I'm taking something from you. Like I do get
Sure.
that, but to then take it that one step farther and like the baby was like at least a year old.
Yeah.
That is a functioning child that you just chopped into pieces.
Yeah. And so they get their child back in pieces, and she's obviously having a very difficult time with this. And so she's like, we're gonna dress him up in this, we're gonna do that. And she goes down to the basement, and Charles is like Frankensteining this child.
But okay, why was there a squirrel tail?
Maybe that's the only body part they had to place in it. Because he'd been doing stuff like that. He'd been like
I
messing around the
know, I
basement before.
know.
And maybe they didn't get all of the body parts back. So that's where the story ends of Charles and Nora, at least for now. And Violet just,
Because Violet's like, I don't believe a word you're
yeah,
saying.
she's like, I don't believe anything you're saying. And he's like, okay, well, it's true. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And then she's like, I don't know why we have to be here all the time. She's like, I want to go out like in the real world, have like a real date. He's like, great, I'll take you out tomorrow. Tomorrow's Halloween, I'll take you out tomorrow. She's like, oh, okay. It's like,
Yeah.
perfect, done. No questions. And then we're out.
He's got a coffee date with her dad. He might as well take her out too.
Absolutely. And so we go straight to the coffee date with dad at like a festival, fall festival thing happening. Tate meets up with Ben, and Ben's not doing well. They
No,
they have a
no, he's
flashback
not.
about Violet's childhood and how she's like grown up to the strong woman and be different than everyone else, like her mom. And he's just like sobbing. And I'm like, because he's saying he was a troubled kid. And I'm like, here's the thing. All of this can be true and you can be upset about it, but you're in a therapy session that
Right,
you're
right. I was like, who is treating who here?
right.
I
It's like things have kind of swapped in
right.
the Ben and Tate relationship.
Yeah, and it's one thing if your trauma made your therapist cry, but when your therapist's trauma is why they're crying, it's not a good situation for you.
Yeah, yeah. But it's okay. Tate doesn't really care. He just needs
Tate
to be
doesn't
in the
Tate
house.
doesn't really need a therapist. He's dead.
Yeah, he needs to be in the house and he needs to have access to Violet. That's it. And then we go back to Addie and Constance. And Constance comes in and she's like, Addie, come on, get ready. Where's your costume? You gotta trick or treat. And Addie, of course, is like being a teenager and she's like, I don't want to do it. I want to be a pretty girl. You said no, I don't want to do anything. I'm just staying home. And then
Also like I know that people with Down syndrome often have mental like mentally um lower age range, like where their mental capacity is
Yeah.
lower. But Constance said something earlier about Addie being in her 30s at least, which then checks out because she was a child when the twins were murdered in the 70s.
Yeah.
But Addie seems to act older than Constance treats her.
I think I think she is and does, but Constance stunts her growth a lot. Um, I think it's a Constance issue.
Yeah,
Um, for sure, because she has obviously had a lot of trauma in her life, and this is her last quote unquote baby
right.
that's still alive, and so she wants to kind of keep her in this baby state forever, as opposed to like losing her, I think, even though she's mean to her. But so I think she's also stunting her growth. But she's completely switches gears and she like bought her a mask so she could be a pretty girl. I was like, first of all, that looks really creepy. She looks so much prettier
So,
without
so
this creepy
creepy.
mask.
That was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life.
Right, like it was such an insult, but trying not to be. Like it was insane. And I was like, okay, this is a lot, but fine. Because Addie's thrilled. She's like, this is great. This is perfect. I was like, it's not, but okay. If you're happy, that's fine. Um,
You say so.
exactly. And so we go back to Vivian and Ben, and she is telling him all this stuff and then calls him out about Hayden. And so she used Chad's advice and she goes and looks up um the phone records, and it turns out there's like 20s of 30s of calls to Hayden or with Hayden. And so he comes up with this elaborate excuse. It's not that elaborate, but it's still a lie. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, she keeps calling me." And like I finally laid
Okay,
down the law.
to be fair, um, he's only kind of lying.
Mm. Well, yeah, she did keep calling it, but then she straight up's like, "Did you see her in Boston?" And he's like, "No." It's like,
Yes, that part is a lie. That part is for sure a lie.
yeah,
But the like what happened, like the her constantly calling him and him saying that he didn't want anything to do with her anymore and trying to cut it off and asking her to stop and saying he was going to get the police involved. That all did happen, just maybe not
right,
with the
quite that
entire
way.
circumstance. Yeah, not quite
Yeah,
exactly the way he said.
yeah.
So it was more of a lie of omission
It was until he straight up lied
until
about
he
it.
straight up lied about seeing her
Yeah.
in Boston. Correct.
And then so Vivian like buys it, which is sad, but is what it is. And she's like, "It's fine." He's like, "I don't think we'll hear from her again." And she was like, "Well,
But
I
then
left her a voicemail."
before he even said that, he was like, he was like, I promise you, like, you won't see, she won't be coming back. And I go, but it's Halloween and she's in your backyard.
But he doesn't know how that works. He doesn't understand how ghosts work. And obviously, because then
Obviously.
she's like, "I left a voicemail." And he's like, "Great, you'll never hear from her again." And then immediately she calls. And I was like, okay, it's a little too convenient American version,
Right.
but fine.
Correct.
Um, so then they get dressed up. Well, he's already dressed up, but then she puts on her like witchy costume. And Chad's over there and he's like, "I hate everything about this." Like he hates all of their costumes, all of their
Called her
decorations.
dress a Rite Aid witch costume.
It was so wild. He was too much. And so then he starts telling them to leave. He's like, "This isn't your house." And they're like, "Pretty sure it is." And he's like telling him, and then Vivian just starts breaking stuff, and she's like, "Absolutely not."
Well,
She
because
just,
they say this isn't your house, you know it, and we know it, and the house knows it.
which
Bitch,
like
what?
is probably all true to be fair, but
Right.
also she just like starts breaking stuff, and she's like, "Everyone leaves," and so eventually they do, and then she's like talking to Ben. She's like, "I absolutely don't believe you.
She's
You
like,
also should leave."
also you leave. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she starts having insane pains, and we they like have to go to the hospital. So he tells Violet, he's like, "Don't answer the door for anyone." She's like, "But it's Halloween." He's like, "No, no one." She's like, "Okay."
And Viv is like, how is the baby kicking? Or Viv's like, I feel the baby kicking. Ben goes, how is it kicking? It's only 8 weeks.
Yeah,
To be fair, my thought was, oh wow, it took 13 seconds for her to get pregnant. So 8 weeks, there's a fully formed adult in your womb.
right. Yeah. Um, yeah. So we go to Violet and she's like listening to her music all the way turned up and can't hear anything. And Addie comes to knock on the door. And the quote unquote popular girls show up and they're like, it says take one. Don't you see what it says? Like, take one and
Did you know
leave.
how to read?
Yeah. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm a pretty girl and Violet's my friend and I want her to see me. And they're
Yeah.
so rude. They're so
So,
mean.
ugh.
And so they like go off and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm a pretty girl too. I'm coming with you. And she follows them and she's trying to keep up with them. Her mask is like kind of a mess, obviously. And she
Obviously.
immediately gets hit by a car. And that was such a wild scene. I remember the first time I saw that, like I knew it was coming obviously this time, but like the first time I saw that, I remember being like, "Oh my God, that is so sudden."
That was, I genuinely did not have words.
Yeah, because like
No.
it's so sad. The girl that's been there for ages, the creepy girl that's been there for ages that knows everyone, dies halfway through the season. Like, what?
Yeah, no,
Um,
I'm baffled. Of course, what happens next with
next
her
is
is
also
even more baffling.
yeah. Well, before we go back to Addie, we go to the hospital, and Vivian's still in pain, but she's like, I think it's starting to calm down a bit. The nurse comes and she's like, how far along are you? She's like, 8 weeks. Like, are you sure? And she's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she's like, it seems like it's much more than that. And she looks at the screen and something on the screen sets her off and she just passes out. She's
I have a theory
terrible.
about that.
Okay.
Do you want me to say it now?
I
Or
absolutely do.
oh, I was gonna save it to my end of the episode theory part,
Mm.
but
No, I want to know now.
oh, I think that this weird rubber man baby that she's pregnant with is a fucking Charles Frankenstein weird limb squirrel tail baby.
Do you think it's wearing a rubber suit?
No, I think no, it's the rubber man's baby. The rubber man impregnated her with a Frankenstein baby from the jar.
That is an interesting theory. That's an interesting theory.
And I
Um,
know that you're not going to say anything that confirms or denies anything that I say, but
but I love hearing the theories regardless.
I haven't been wrong on many of my theories yet.
To be fair, your first couple of theories were like pretty obvious from the beginning. Like they were pretty obvious, um but then we go back to Addie and Constance finds her on the road and she is distraught and she's like, this is my baby, she can't die. And then she like clicks and she's like, oh my God, if you're not gonna save her, we have to get her to the lawn now. Everybody's like, what? And she's like, no, she has to get to the lawn. Her friends are here. And like, it's so sad. And she drives her across.
Here's the thing. Knowing Constance and Addie, that was heartbreaking, and I wanted to cry for Addie. If I were that EMT, I would institutionalize Constance.
Oh, 1,000%. Nothing makes sense. Absolutely. But also, like, if you're grieving your child, like, people have probably said crazier things to find dead children. Like, so probably not. But, like, it was so heartbreaking because also she gets her to the yard. And she's like, gets her to the lawn where she tries to. And then she looks at her and she's already dead. And it's just, it's heartbreaking.
That is awful.
And because we don't like to leave heartbreaking scenes, we just keep them coming. We go to Mora, who is visiting her mother in the hospital. And she goes in and she's sitting beside her and she's saying some kind words. And then she immediately pulls the breathing tube out of her mouth. So
And
she gets out.
lets her mom go.
And then her mother tries to take her with her. And she's like, come with me. And she's so devastated. And she's like,
She's
I can't.
sobbing. She's like, I want to.
Ugh, it's so sad. And then we go back to Violet, who hears the doorbell ring now because this is the time she chose to stop using her music. And Larry is banging on the door again. He is done with his patience. It is all gone. It has been
Right.
12 minutes and it's gone now. And so she calls Ben because, of course, she's in a panic. And
Yeah,
he's
because
like
there's a weird man at her door telling her that
asking for a
he
thousand
asking
dollars.
for $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, it's fine. Stay inside. She's like, should I call the police? He's like, no, it's okay. Just keep the doors locked. I was like,
No,
okay.
he doesn't say no, like a don't worry about it. He says a no, like dear God, don't,
Right.
because
Because we don't all need to go to jail after today. Um,
right.
and so she's getting off the phone and she's just staring at the door, and the camera pans, and the rubber man is standing behind her. And then the parents get home, and Violet's gone. And so they're searching for Violet. Everything is a flutter. And then another knock on the door, and Ben opens it, and it's Hayden. And he just
My,
closes the door in her face.
my dad goes, "That's the dead girlfriend, right?" I was like, yeah,
And
that
that's the
that's
end of the episode. Everything's left in chaos. So, yeah, that was our episode for today. Who do you want to punch in the face?
Chad,
Oh, 1,000%. 1,000%.
because he is a douchebag. Like,
So much.
no wonder Patrick's cheating on you.
Yeah, no, he's not great. Um but I did put him first because obviously he's the correct choice. But as
Yeah,
my backup, I went with Constance. Because
valid.
while she did lose her child and is going through a rough time, she was very mean to her at first. For
She did
no
say some
reason.
really unforgivable things.
Yeah, she was very mean to her, and I hope she regrets it. Um, who's your MVP?
Myra, it was a rough episode for her. No, no, I don't know. I would pick Moira, except for that I just really started to love Addie this episode. Just for them to rip her away from me.
I know that's how they do it here in American Horror Story world. They pull your heartstrings and set your emotions on fire.
I'm gonna stick with Moira though, because that her saying goodbye to her mom was just the most painful thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I went out on a limb because a lot of people sucked this episode.
Yeah,
And I went with Constance's boy toy because he was so kind to Addie, and he just seemed like a
was
genuinely nice human.
that's not at all the direction I thought you were going in, but like I don't hate it.
Well, like you think this is the end of her life, and she finally gets some like really nice
Yeah.
like companionship, like from another human being who just treats her like a normal person. And it was so kind. It was so nice.
Yeah.
But I do, dear friends, have some trivia and some goofs
Please.
for you. If it wasn't obvious enough, the flashback to the kidnapping of the baby is a direct reference to the kidnapping of Charles Lindbergh's baby. Um, the George and Martha reference was used to reference Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf,
Okay.
which I read like ages ago and I do not
I
remember
know.
my life. Um, and then the mean girl that was making fun of Addie, she
Yeah.
is in Legacies now, but this was her first speaking role.
Okay.
And then just a little goof. Um, when Nora's on the phone with this creepy guy, she gets off the phone and hears a dial tone. However, this is set in 1920, and dial tones were not around until 1940.
Yeah.
So, way to go, Ryan Murphy. Got your years messed up. But yeah, so what do you have happening in your brain? You got some predictions, you got some thoughts, emotions,
I
feelings.
well, I've talked about my Frankenstein baby theory.
Mhm.
Um, I will say I did have a little bit spoiled in this, no, in the sense that when I pressed pause, like when I finished the episode and it went back to the screen to say the next episode, the description for the next episode says that Vi is on her date with Tate. So like I know she's not dead.
Oh,
So
fair.
I mean, which
It's not a huge
that's not a
spoiler.
huge spoiler because I also still don't know what happened to her or where she is or if she just snuck out to see Tate, which makes sense because that's what she was going to do anyway. So
Right,
like
right.
so that is my only like mini spoiler,
Which is
which would
not
be
really a spoiler
yeah,
and
it's
will
not really a
probably be
spoiler.
up in the
It'll be
first
resolved
30
in the
seconds.
first, yeah, I was gonna say it'll be resolved when the next episode starts.
Yeah.
Um, I do I do think that there I don't, not that there has to be, but I feel like there has to be something that continues with Addie's story. Like I feel like we're not done with
We're not
that
done yet.
story.
Okay.
But also, unfortunately, Halloween is not over,
You're right,
um,
it's not over yet.
which means that this Hayden stuff is not over yet. But also, unfortunately for Ben, Hayden died at the murder house, which means that Halloween and the corporal state and the being able to leave the house doesn't mean the end of Hayden.
Yeah. That's a rough one.
Yeah. So I don't even know.
I know. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about the show? Is it making more sense? Are you enjoying
Yeah,
it?
no, I'm definitely enjoying it. It is feeling like it is making more sense. Um, I don't know if I'm just a very different person than I was 12 years ago, but it doesn't feel scary to me.
I I think that's fair. I also feel that. Because I
Like,
watched I watched it when the second season came out. I watched the first season with Caitlin after because she'd already watched it.
yeah,
Um, and it was kind of nerve-wracking, and like we watched it right before we graduated. So I guess it was a couple years later. It was like 2015.
yeah,
Um, when I watched it. And we so we left and I didn't finish it with her, and then I was like, I'm too scared to watch this by myself. And then
yeah,
I watched like 8 episodes with her, so I'd seen most of it before. And then I watched it last year because I did a whole American Horror Story rewatch last year.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, this is not as bad as I thought it was. But I see like why there were concerning moments. Like if I'm watching this at midnight in the dark.
right. Well, like last week, I forgot to turn the light in the staircase to my studio on. So when I closed up from the podcast, I turned the light to the studio off and I didn't have the light in the stairs. And like
Gotcha.
there was a split moment where I was like, the rubber man is standing behind me and he's going to push me down the stairs. Like I had like a split thought moment
Sure.
where it's not to say that there's not anything about it that's freaky, but I remember in 2011 refusing to watch the show because I thought it was horrifying. And like it wasn't until Coven came out that I even considered being like capable of watching it. And it was only that season because
Yeah.
like I remember just genuinely feeling like I could not watch the show. And I don't think it's as scary as I was convinced myself that it was.
But you also think about like where you've come from then. Like you've watched more horror since then.
Yeah.
And so you see like I mean, even me, like I was terrified of everything forever. And now I'm horror. And but
Yeah.
like you watch Hemlock Grove and at first you're like, oh my gosh, there's some really creepy scenes. And then you watch Hemlock Grove, you watch American Horror Story, you watch all these movies, these like horror films, and it's like, oh, there's like a formula there a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like it's not as scary as you thought it was in the beginning.
Yeah,
And so
no.
I think I think there's a multitude of it's 12 years later and
Right.
you've been introduced to so much more horror since then as well.
That's true.
So
I mean, let's be honest, I can still be a little bitch.
No, that's fair. That's fine.
But it's the jump scares. It's the jump scares are
It
what
is,
get
yeah.
me. Jump scares are the because it like sends my anxiety into a different level. And this has some interesting visuals and it has some like creepy moments, but it hasn't had anything that was like a completely unsuspected jump scare.
But also, like, one thing about like American Horror Story, a lot of it's based off of true crime stories. And so like
Yeah,
you know a lot of true crime. And so you're
right.
looking at these stories. I mean, we just talked about the Lindbergh baby for this one.
Yeah,
And like the
yeah.
house is based off of
The
sorry, what's
Winchester.
Winchester
No,
House.
yeah,
And like we had the story with Richard Speck that was in the second episode. So like
yeah.
all of the quote unquote horror and like tragedies you're seeing are stories you've already heard.
Which
And so while
makes
they're in a fictionalized world, they're not necessarily going to catch you off guard or like scare
right.
uh, aside from like, you know.
I will say the one moment that was like actually like caught me off guard in this in terms of like scary was when they snapped Chad's neck at the beginning. That the noise like I thought
Not
they
the
were he
next
was
step.
I don't it that was the noise of the neck snap. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So that's our episode.
Mhm.
I can't wait for part two next week. It'll be the mid-season finale. And
Yeah. But before that, we will have an episode of Stargate, and my little mini teaser is for our first episode of the 21st century.
oh my
Um,
God, stop.
is that we will have some returning familiar faces, but not who you
Ooh.
think.
Ooh, who I'm gonna guess. Who am I gonna guess? Oh God, I don't know anyone I've ever seen. Hecate? Did she die, or is she like
First of
still?
all, Hecate was in Kolchak. You're thinking of Hathor, who is a totally
Or
different god, and Hathor did die.
she died. Ugh,
Yeah.
you never know. You never know. I think we're gonna get the Knox. I'm voting on the Knox for next
All
episode.
right.
Um, but yeah, if you have thoughts, if you have guesses on who we're gonna see next episode of Stargate, if you have predictions, if you have feelings that you need to get out of your system about American Horror Story, feel free to email us, deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can find us on all the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me at CECloud13.
And you can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And we will see you for Sci-Fi Sunday. See ya.
Bye.